Welcome back to Healthy Vibrations, a platform that brings together changemakers, trailblazers who are here to effectuate our youth. And today we have Lisa Johnson with us of Been There, Got Out. She's the co-founder of Been There, Got Out, a high-conflict divorce coach and a certified domestic violence advocate who has successfully represented herself through a series of court appearances. I was on her Instagram Live a few weeks ago, and it was the most amazing Instagram Live I've done. She's very, very knowledgeable, so you must reach out to her. Her case was published in the Connecticut Law Journal and is being used as a legal precedent. And her live testimony helped pass Jennifer's Law in Connecticut, the third state in America, to expand its legal definition of domestic violence to include coercive control. And she and her partner run Been There, Got Out. Her partner's name is Chris and is the male half of Been There, Got Out. He coaches people in high conflict relationships, divorce, custody battles, and co-parenting. And they also offer a weekly legal abuse support group. So go ahead, join her group, follow her on Instagram. She's absolutely amazing. Both of them are amazing. So Lisa, welcome to our show. Very, very grateful that you can make it.
Thank you so much.
So I know I was on your Instagram Live a few weeks ago, and we exchanged a couple of thoughts on divorce. But here is where I think I'd like to begin today. So what do you think happens to children when you're in a bad marriage and you tell yourself you're staying for the sake of the kids?
Oh, it's such an awful thing because we feel, I don't know where we got the thought from, maybe our past generations, but that we need to have an intact family for the sake of the kids and it's healthier, but it's actually the opposite for a number of reasons. When you stay in an unhealthy relationship in a marriage for the kids, you're actually harming them because they are learning that this is normal and familiar and that they're going to gravitate towards relationships just like these. We think that kids will listen to what we say. If we say, don't be like daddy and I, or don't be like mommy and I, that they'll listen. They won't. That's what's familiar. And that's what they will. That's the only thing they know. So you're harming them in that way. And like, you, Dr. Nadi said, they think that's what they need to have. Sorry, I'm getting a little hot in here. Yeah, I mean, they learn that unhealthy relationships are normal and they can be abusive themselves. They will repeat the same behaviors that they see in the home. The other thing is, home is supposed to be a safe place, but for kids that are living in a home where domestic violence is present, and remember, domestic violence is not just physical, it's emotional, verbal, psychological, could be sexual, all kinds of things. Home feels like a war zone. So that's what you have your kids being subject to day to day. Kids who are in these situations are more likely to commit suicide, again, to be predatory themselves, or to think, again, like we said, that this is normal. And the dynamic is that they are supposed to be worrying about everyone else's feelings, like all kinds of unhealthy patterns develop when you stay for the sake of the kids.
Oh my God, you've opened a Pandora's box. And as you know, probably last week, I'm so passionate about this subject. Yes, and this is where substance abuse develops. This is where domestic violence develops. This is where we have kids going around shooting and carrying guns. So yes, people out there, all the parents out there listening to this, if you're in a bad marriage, either take a decision, either leave or make it work. But don't let your children suffer. And don't say you're staying in it for the kids, because you are raising domestic abusers. The longer you stay in it, the more chances your child is either going to become one or be subject to domestic abuse.
Right. And so, also you talked about something, I think it was you talked about something called emotional neglect.
Yes. So I'm going to say that again. Thank you for bringing that up. Emotional neglect, when children go through emotional neglect in childhood, which is when a parent is not emotionally present for the child, which normally happens when you're going through divorce. You're not mentally, you're not emotionally present. Your children are just there. They grow up and fail to recognize emotions in themselves and in the people around them. So they get emotionally completely closed off because they don't know what emotion looks like. Emotional neglect leads to a person not recognizing their emotions, a person feeling empty from the inside and not being aware of emotions around them. What does that lead to? It leads to failed relationships with self and others as they grow up. So multiple things. When I was going through my divorce, my therapist said the same thing. My therapist told me, you are not staying in for the child. You're staying in it because you're scared to get out. So face your fears, parents. Either stay in it, make it work, or step out. Thank you, Lisa, for that.
One more thing. Sorry, we forgot something
please.
Very important. Their academic suffer. Kids, when parents are going through a difficult time, whether it's high conflict, divorce or separation or not, you don't have the energy to support your kids' academics. When their grades start to drop, doors are closing for them in the future for options. So it has like long-term effects, not just on their personal relationships, but on their academic future and what they could end up doing in life for a career.
I think it has an impact on everything, their mental, emotional, physical, every health. Their academic, they're going to suffer. They're not going to be able to be in healthy relationships. Their mental health is going to suffer. They're going to look for outlets, and that's when they get into substance abuse and gun violence. So yes, a very deep impact on a child's mental health. Also, what do you think? Kids normally, when parents are going through a divorce, children are normally pulled in different directions. And I know this, again, has a very deep impact on them. How do you think parents can stop that? Or what impact does it have on the kids?
Again, like huge question, hard to answer in just a couple of sentences. Like I just had an interview earlier today about how our world is abusive relationships, not just, if it's not an oxymoron, normal divorce. Yes. But in abusive situations, part of what abusers do is they turn the kids against the other parent. It starts while you're still in the marriage. That's another danger in staying. Sometimes kids are being groomed to have what's called loyalty conflicts, where they feel like they have to side with one parent, and they're really stuck because when they show love for one parent or even affection, the other parent gets angry and punishes them. So they're not, again, it comes back to they're not allowed to have their feelings. They're kind of walking on eggshells. They don't know what's going to happen. And it just puts them in the middle. So it's really, really hard. That's just one thing. The tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. And this is how you're raising people pleasers.
Right.
This is what happens, because when these children grow up, they learn to side with the person who they learn to please everybody, because that's what they've done in childhood. Is they're busy pleasing both their parents because they don't want to suffer anybody's anger. They don't want to suffer anybody's wrath. They're already in the comfort zone. They don't want any more discomfort. And that's when they grow up to become people pleasers. They learn to maintain the peace, which is what they're doing in the marriage, right?
Right. And often kids in these situations become emotionally responsible for what their parents are going through. And the parents don't even realize it. Kids also will always blame themselves during a divorce, no matter what. They just blame themselves. It doesn't matter what you tell them. And think about too, even though we said it's not good to stay for the sake of the kids, when you separate, it's the child's life that's impacted the most, because then they suddenly have to go back and forth between two homes. They're the ones who have to remember to get all their stuff, to get their homework, to make sure that both parents are aware what's going on. It deeply impacts them. So they're in a really rough spot. And when you're adding to it with, say, bad mouthing the other parent, it just compounds the harm.
Correct. So here's what we got. When kids are pulled in different directions, they become emotionally responsible. They feel emotionally responsible for the parents. They feel they're the ones who are responsible for the marriage breakup. They grow up to be people pleasers, and they don't want to get out of their comfort zone because they learn to keep the calm in difficult situations.
Right.
Did I miss anything, Lisa? We got everything here, right?
I'm sure there's a lot more to add to that, but this is not, we don't have the day to discuss.
Correct. No, I think this podcast is really geared towards raising awareness and telling people what can happen if you stay in a bad marriage versus what can happen if you leave a bad marriage. So really, we'll try, no education can happen in 30 minutes. So take what you get from here. So Lisa, tell me now, when parents are in a difficult divorce or in a bad marriage, it's very natural that they're going to disagree on what's best for the child. how can both the parents manage that? Because it is obviously having a very deep impact on the child.
So the tricky thing in terms of both parents managing it is we tend to work with one side who tends to be the more rational one. Often our clients are dealing with a very irrational co-parent. And so the world operates through logic, and most people think that divorce, everybody's angry, but you are going to do what's best for the kids. In situations like these, domestic violence is really about power and control. And often one parent will weaponize the situation, specifically making decisions where whatever the other parent wants, they'll say no. So something we see all the time as a problem in the relationships that our clients deal with are the kid needs therapy. What kid wouldn't need therapy going through such a huge life transition? But then let's say the other side says there's nothing wrong with the kid. Actually, no, start with saying you're the one whose fault it is. Our kid would be fine if it weren't for you, if you weren't such a bad parent, if you weren't destroying this marriage and their lives and this relationship. So let's say our client wants the kids to get therapy, to get help navigating. The other side will weaponize it and say they don't need therapy. So we always have to come up with alternative solutions, because we can't just assume, like, both parents aren't going to be on the same page in our world. They just won't. So we try to come up with other more creative ways that kids can get the help that they need. So for example, if you're dealing with somebody who won't agree to anything, even though it's in your kid's best interests, maybe what you can do is go through the kids' school. So schools take care of your kids for 6 hours-ish a day. You don't need to get permission from the other side to talk to the guidance counselor. The school can give services without getting the permission of the parents. Another idea might be to interview a tutor. Someone I interviewed the other week, Dr. Christopher Willard, is a psychologist at Harvard Medical School and professor there, said that tutors are the unsung therapists. Tutors tend to not be labeled as like, oh, there's something wrong with me. It's like, no, this is someone who's helping me with my academics, but they can still do mental check-ins, not therapy, but at least a kid has someone to talk to just for a couple of minutes, who can also help them, keep them focused on their academics. So there's other ways that your kid could have someone to talk to if you can't get the other side to agree to therapy.
Thank you. And I'm going to add coaching to that. So tutoring and coaching. Coaching is also very helpful. So anybody listening to this, and if you're struggling with a bad marriage or a divorce, coaching is great for teenagers because it helps them move forward. Whereas therapy, you know, a lot of parents come to me, and I'm going to bring this up. This is a little bit, I digress off the topic, but a lot of parents come to me saying, my child has been going to therapy and I don't see a change. Mm-hmm. The difference between coaching and therapy is coaching is a faster process because it's all about moving forward. While therapy is also about moving forward, it's a much slower process because we're focusing more on the past. Whereas in coaching, you focus briefly on the past, but the idea is to move the child forward. So I would add to that. So as Lisa pointed out, alternative measures, if the other parent does not agree, you can talk to the school. School has counseling services. And you can, the counselors can help the child in school, or tutors can help the child in school. Tutors can help the child, and also coaches. So that's an alternative measure if two parents are not on the same page. Now, what is an Alo-non community? I spoke to a parent the other day, and they also mentioned, how do you think it can help parents who are struggling with people with a difficult partner who needs a lot of attention?
Okay, so let me just say what Alo-non is, because people are like, what? They've never heard of that. So there's a big organization all over the world, I think. It's called Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's for people who are alcoholics or have problems with addiction. And that's for them. So Alo-non was actually developed because years ago, century ago, whatever, when Alcoholics Anonymous started, the spouses who tended to be women would wait outside while the men were in there discussing the problem. And they realized that they had a lot of the same issues. And the main one being that they felt like their lives had become out of control, but they couldn't do anything to make it stop. So Alo-non is I don't know if you have international audience, but I know it's in America. I'm not sure if it's in other countries. Yes. But it's a free support group for people who love addicts or are trying to deal with somebody where they can't just get away from them, and they learn emotional detachment. They learn like, what can I do to help this relationship and what can't I do? It's like, I didn't cause it, I can't control it, and I can't cure it, but how can I still live my life with a certain amount of peace over the things that I can do something about, instead of feeling like my life is out of control as this person who's got an addiction. And my divorce lawyer recommended that I go to Alo-non, and many of our clients have also been recommended to go to Alo-non, to start realizing like we've been so in families where there's all these issues with like domestic violence or addiction, the whole family dynamic shifts, where everything is about the person with the problem, or in like a bad marriage, the kids, everybody learns how to operate around the drama of that relationship.
So it's not only for alcoholics, you're saying it's for domestic abuse also.
Yeah. Okay. So Alcoholics Anonymous is for alcoholics. Alo-non.
So that's Alo-non.
Yeah. Alo-non is separate. It came from Alcoholics Anonymous. It's from people who feel like they're dealing with other people who they love, who are out of control, and it's affecting their own lives, where it's almost like a codependency thing. They're being pulled into situations where they're like miserable, and everything is about this person's doing this and this person's doing this, so I can't do that. So their lives have become out of control. So how do we learn to start emotionally detaching so that we can still find some semblance of peace, take care of our children, work, do what we need to do without being consumed by someone else's drama that we didn't create, we didn't cause it, and we can't cure it.
Now, can you spell that for our audience, just to be?
Yeah. So it's Al, like AL dash capital ANON. Al.
Okay. Alo-non. Again, if in the United States, I don't know if it exists in other countries, but if you're in the United States and you're struggling with domestic abuse, this is one place that you can get support, correct?
Emotional detachment. Yes, it's
emotional. It helps you with emotional detachment.
Right. It's kind of strange because when you go in there, like sometimes they'll be talking about people with addiction, but I remember going in there and people were saying, "Oh, my mother is a narcissist, and my life is like out of control because of it." And I thought, "Oh, this is interesting." So, it's free. Whatever help you can get, I found a lot of support and excellent advice there.
Wonderful. I think this community should definitely help people who are going through, because children start thinking they are the caretakers in a situation like this.
Right. You need to take care of yourself.
Right. So it teaches you to take care of yourself. It teaches you to kind of gather all the energies, detach, and spiritually become centered, so you can give to yourself, so that you can give back to your family.
Yeah, it helps you let go of as much drama as possible for the things that you can't control.
Correct. Now, Lisa, as we all know, and you know better than anybody else because you're in this, marriage is hard and divorce is a process. Sometimes you don't know where your marriage is going. You don't know whether you're going to stay in the marriage or not. So what do you do when you're not clear of where your marriage is going? And you're too quick to tell your child that you want a divorce.
Oh, you don't do that. You don't tell your child that you want a divorce when you're not sure yet, because then you put your child in that same situation where they feel responsible. They're waiting. They don't have any control. They didn't cause it, and they can't make it stop or better. But they now feel like they might be able to do something about it. That's like a terrible thing to do to a child. Just like they say, when you meet a new partner, you don't want to just introduce your child to the partner right away. You want to wait till it's stable. Kids need consistency, stability, and routine in their lives. We all need that, but especially kids, because they're still forming their identities. Like they have a life separate from the family relationship. They've got their friends, they've got school, they've got all kinds of other things, and this impacts their world. So you don't need to add to their fear. So
how do you handle it when you're going through a bad marriage and nothing is working out and you have no idea what you're going to do? How do you handle the child? What do you tell the child, if anything?
So does the child knows that something's wrong? I mean, kids always know more than we think they do.
Of course,
the child, let's say the child knows that you're fighting and things are really bad, but they don't know what it is, just that something is really wrong. I mean, there's a couple of things, like, again, getting the child help. Kids need someone to talk to anyway, even without the drama. It's always nice to have like an adult that they can speak to who's safe. So whether it's formal, like therapist, mentor, coach through the school, or even like an adult friend. I know my daughter found a lot of comfort in talking to a couple of my close friends that she felt relaxed with. They would take her, my daughter's the girly girl, I'm not. So they take her to get her nails done and her hair, and they could do like the girly girl things and for lunch. And so it wasn't me, but it was somebody else who could sort of like just, she could talk to and have a good time with. I think the main thing you can do as a parent is to keep it together for yourself as much as possible. So you need to go get support. You need to figure out ways that you can try to parent your kids as well as you can during this very uncertain, scary time. It's just getting yourself whatever support you need, talking to a local domestic violence center. Usually there's emotional abuse going on. There's all kinds of ways that people can help you figure out, like, is this safe? Is it not safe? Am I in an unhealthy relationship? 51% of people in abusive relationships don't even realize it, because things are normalized. Like, things start out in the beginning, and when you're in a relationship for a while, things get worse. You don't know what to compare it to. People think marriage is a commitment, relationships are hard, maybe this is normal. So it helps to have somebody outside to just talk to and bounce ideas off. Friends don't give the best advice. I know in my own relationship, I was with my ex for 20 years. And in the last couple of years, I didn't want to tell my family, because I thought if there's a chance of us staying together, which I really hoped, then they would hate him if they knew the stuff that had happened. So I talked to 3 close friends of mine, and they didn't know. I mean, none of us understood what I was dealing with, but they're like, oh, but maybe this, that, and the other thing. And I should have talked to nothing against my wonderful friends who did the best they could, but I really should have probably reached out to professionals to get some neutral advice and kind of like some harsh reality checks, rather than just telling me what I wanted to hear, because it's so hard. I mean, there's people that love you and care for you, and they want what's best, but sometimes they don't understand what's actually going on. So it's good to have a neutral person.
No, absolutely. And not only that, they're emotionally bound with you, right? So it's very hard for them to give an unbiased opinion. So
Exactly.
it's important to get a professional in the mix, so you can get an unbiased opinion and the right thing to do, because they're not emotionally tied to you.
Right. I mean, some people, they'll talk to a divorce attorney. So it's not like you have to commit yourself to going to a therapist for several months. You can just go and meet with someone once and see what it's like. Domestic violence centers have free counseling. You could just go in once, talk to somebody. It takes a long time to get out of relationships sometimes.
I think it's also, there are resources out there, but if you're a case of domestic violence, it's also very hard to get used to the fact and understand that you are a case of domestic violence. Exactly. And just be able to step out and go and lodge a complaint or go and ask for help. I think that in itself is a huge step. Well, because you're living in fear at that time.
Right. And many of us in these relationships, we do everything. We handle most of the household responsibilities. We handle the parenting. We're seen as very strong people who have it together. And so I know for me, I was like, I don't want to tell anybody. Like, I'm ashamed of what's happening.
Yes, there's a lot of shame involved in it.
Yeah, I don't want to, like, what would people think? And I don't want the kids to. So there's secrecy and shame. And that's why it is so important to reach out and talk to people, because it's such a relief to have somebody else say, okay, here's what to do. Here's what you can think about. It's like, oh, I don't have to do another thing all by myself.
And the first thing you need at that point in time is to feel safe, and somebody out there can make you feel safe, who knows what to do.
Exactly.
So yes. And with kids, I think it's very important when you're going through a divorce, if you're a parent listening to this podcast, if you have children, very important to get your children professional help, because you're not going to be, as much as you want to, you're not going to be present for your child at that point in time. You're unable to be present. So get that emotional help, get that professional help from a professional who can guide your child, who can give you and your child an unbiased opinion and help them through the process until you are capable enough to step out and deal with it on your own.
Right. It's like you have to accept that there's times in our lives when we are in survival mode. And we always feel so much guilt. I know I felt a lot of guilt looking back on some of those years where I was just like, oh my gosh, I was such a terrible mother. I wasn't paying attention to the kids. I was so consumed with what was happening as my marriage was falling apart. You did the best. You do the best you can. And so one of the best things you can do is to realize I am not capable of doing all this by myself. And I need to start reaching out for help for myself and for my children.
And the minute you ask for help, you feel that you're getting stronger, because asking for help is a sign of strength.
Exactly.
So absolutely ask for that help. I mean, I've gone through it, not domestic violence, but I've gone through divorce. And at that point in time, you just are unable to think. So allow somebody else to think for you and your child.
Exactly.
I could go on and on with this conversation, Lisa. I think it's very close to both our hearts, but in the interest of time, I'd like our audience to know, what is it that you do and how can you help them? I think that's, in very simple terms, if anybody needs to reach out to you, what should be their why?
Okay. So we always say, if you're struggling, trying to get out of a toxic relationship, you're in the middle of a custody battle, or post-judgment, you just are co-parenting with someone that's really, really difficult. Chris and I do a number of things for our clients. The main thing is we want them to save time, money, and energy as they move through the legal process and thereafter. We do a lot of stuff. So I used to be a high school English teacher. So we do a lot of stuff with teaching communication, proper communication. We do a lot with helping our clients put together targeted documentation to either if they have a lawyer or not, so that they're not wasting all this money throwing everything in a lawyer. We do stuff with helping them present properly to court, custody evaluators, guardian ad litems, whoever. We want them to remain as calm as possible. So we help them stay focused and organized, because there's so much fear around, like, oh my gosh, I've never done this before, I don't want to mess up. We, more than anything, we do something called strategic communication, where we basically teach you how to write to your ex as though you are writing with a judge who's going to read it, or any other professional involved in the case. We teach you how to start documenting patterns of behavior over time and turning hearsay into evidence. We want to also help protect our clients from the inevitable accusations of parental alienation, because that's like a big part of our world where our clients are accused of that. So we want them to be able to defend themselves. We work with them on preparing for mediations, negotiation, determining leverage, like all kinds of things. So that's what we do, individual coaching. And then we also have something called a weekly legal abuse support group. We meet every Sunday for about an hour and 45 minutes over Zoom only. Our clients are all over North America and the world. Everybody's dealing with the same really difficult, high conflict ex. So it's not like a normal divorce. It's like when you tell people and they're like, how could that be? That all of our people are like, no, I get it. You don't need to explain it. So it's good to be in a very supportive community. We do not go on about how bad things are, because you can do that elsewhere. I don't find that helpful. We strategize, and then we deal with the bigger issues, such as, how is my kid going to be okay? Especially with a parent like that, and me in the state that I'm in, how can my kids be okay? What can I do? And then how do I co-parent with a very difficult person? So we find that our clients really appreciate having like regular ongoing support. We also do this thing called free check-ins, where we proofread their messages to their ex. But we've learned that people who are in healing communities heal faster and heal better. So that's why it really, really is important to reach out for support for yourself and for your children. That's the only way to really move along in the process, because I know a lot of us know people who have been in these situations and years have passed and they haven't healed. They're still terrified. They feel overwhelmed. There's a sense of dread. So there's things that can be done to start making progress. And my hashtag that one of my friends came up with is from puddle to ninja. So we meet you, you're a mess, and we will help get you stronger and stronger. And you'll see, like, we're very, very proud of the progress that our community makes. Yeah.
Wonderful. We can also call you gatekeepers.
No, that's a bad word. That's a bad word. Yes.
Oh, that's a bad word?
Yes.
Okay.
In the parental alienation lingo, a gatekeeper is somebody who's keeping the child, who's holding information from the child.
Oh, I take that back. No. Okay. Well, so as you know, Lisa and Chris are extremely knowledgeable in this field. So if you're going through a hard time, you're going through domestic abuse, you can reach out to them and they will be happy to help you. Thank you, Lisa, for coming and educating our audience. It was an absolute joy to have you with us. And I will put Lisa's details in the podcast. Please reach out to her should you need help. Any last closing words from you, Lisa?
No, thank you so much. I am so glad we met recently. We knew it was meant to be, and we're going to have more conversations.
Absolutely. And Lisa and I met through BNI. 2 members in 1 week said, you guys need to meet each other. So it was destined. So I'm sure we're going to meet again.
Definitely.
So thank you, Lisa. I appreciate your time and effort.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.